2022. That's right, folks. All year, we'll be bringing you news stories and interviews with political candidates as we ramp up to that fateful day. And the fact of the matter is this year will be one of the most important midterm elections in modern history. Law enforcement, border security, education, and COVID-19. These are the major issues facing America right now, and the Democrats have done nothing but push policy that endangers us all. Crime is running rampant across America, from violent shootings to smash and grabs. Cities and companies are losing millions of dollars to criminals. And while some liberals saw the error of their ways and are trying to give more money back to police, many more, like New York City's newest district attorney, would rather see this country burn to the ground if it means letting felons run free, all in the name of criminal reform policies, or so they say. At the border, 2021 broke the record for the most illegal alien crossings in the last 100 years. I guess the Biden administration can call that some sort of accomplishment. They won. But it's their bad policies that are causing the chaos. Migrants are flooding the southern border, bringing crime and drugs. And what is the administration doing about all of that? Shipping them across the country in the dead of night, letting them live in America free of charges. And instead of finding ways to close the border, what is the liberal priority here?
The investigation into what occurred has not yet concluded. We know that those images painfully conjured up the worst elements of our nation's ongoing battle against systemic racism.
Yeah. The priority at the border is solving racism. Starting to see a pattern here, folks. In schools, we already saw what happened during the Virginia election. Remember when Democrat Terry McAuliffe let it slip how he really felt about parents?
And I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decisions. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Yeah, right. Okay. And remember how the mainstream media reacted to that whopper?
The enduring power of the culture wars, and the Republicans are better at playing this game because it's essentially white identity politics. That works for Republicans.
Apparently it worked for Youngkin as well. Everything was about race with these people, is about race with these people. They don't actually care about what was taught in our schools or what is taught in our schools. No one in America is arguing that we need to teach our kids about America's history, but that's not what these liberals are pushing. They're forcing ideologies down impressionable children's throats. Things like critical race theory and the 1619 Project, they don't teach you lessons in history. They teach lessons in making kids feel bad about being born a certain way. I don't believe these liberal teachers' unions and school boards when they say they care about our kids and what they learn, because if they did, the Chicago Teachers Union wouldn't put protect the kids as their last demand after walking out of school over ridiculous COVID demands. Speaking of which, how has the Biden administration handled the COVID pandemic? Last time I checked, the president was going to shut down the virus.
I'm never going to raise the white flag of surrender. We're going to beat this virus, and we're going to get it under control, I promise you.
That's not happening. Things got even worse, much worse. People died. More people died under Biden than under President Trump. More people lost their businesses under Biden. People lost their jobs thanks to his unconstitutional, we know that now, vaccine mandates because of Joe Biden and the Democrats' draconian vaccine policies. More and more people will become unemployed. And despite the Supreme Court ruling letting big businesses off the hook for Biden's mandate, healthcare workers still need to get the shot. So what's going to happen to the hospitals when their employees are forced to walk out and quit or get fired? More on that later. But the point is this. With President Biden's approval rating in the tank at just 33%, even anxious Democrats are expecting a red wave. They've even floating the idea of throwing Biden under the bus and making Hillary Clinton their candidate in 2024. And instead of riding off into the sunset, Donald Trump continues to pull strings, looking to become a kingmaker of sorts, throwing his support to some candidates and undermining others who don't fit his MAGA mold. This weekend, he'll hold a rally in Arizona where candidates are flocking to his side. We'll cover that on Newsmax. The former president is very popular among Republicans, with an Economist YouGov poll showing that 81% of GOPers have a somewhat favorable or very favorable opinion of Trump. But his influence really didn't affect the recent Republican victory in Virginia, a state he lost by double digits in 2020. And another state to watch is Florida and Governor Ron DeSantis. DeSantis is seen as a popular alternative to Trump, and his strong stance against COVID mandates and closures of schools and businesses went over very well among Florida residents. Ask me about it. I'm here. And in Georgia, the vocal and outspoken Democrat favorite, Stacey Abrams, is sure to get her party's nod for the governor. She snubbed Sleepy Joe during his recent visit to the Peach State, and like Trump, claims the last election for governor in 2018 was stolen from her, and she has never conceded the loss. The current governor, Republican Brian Kemp, fell out of favor with the ever so fickle former President Donald Trump, who has thrown his support to former Senator David Perdue. There's hardly a spot on the map where there won't be a hard-fought battle come November, and we'll always have the best and latest details for you. One interesting race we're following here is always the important state, Pennsylvania, where Dr. Mehmet Oz is a Republican candidate for Senate. He left his TV show and is running for that Senate office, as we spoke of. He's a vocal opponent of Dr. Fauci's approach to COVID and even called Fauci out for a debate, labeling him a petty tyrant. All right, one of the states where we can expect to see major changes is Minnesota, a state that's been the focal point for 2 years worth of riots, lootings, and a rise in crime, all spurred by the BLM movement, Antifa, and the defund the police protesters. It's also the home of Representative Ilhan Omar, who spent her political career so far trying to dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department, literally. Joining us now to talk about what changes he wants to bring to the land of 10,000 lakes, Republican gubernatorial candidate Kendall Qualls, also a U.S. Army veteran. Thank you for your service, Kendall. Also, tell us why you want to be governor in the state of Minnesota. I mean, how are you going to bring change to that state? It's a very liberal state, by the way.
Well, actually, it's not as liberal as people think. And Eric, thanks so much for having me on board. And I am excited about this. Supporters are excited about me coming into the race. Here's number one reason I'm getting into this race. Minnesota was ground zero, as you mentioned, for all the rioting, looting, defunding the police. And in the center of it all was Ilhan Omar, our Attorney General Keith Ellison, and our weak governor, Tim Walz, for allowing that to happen. You know, what's interesting is since that event happened and it spread across the country, for 2 years now, we've been seeing record crime, carjackings, robberies. It's up at record levels. All the time, they're actually pushing this anti-American woke agenda in our schools, and it's all of the crime is going unabated. It's absolutely unexcusable. So that's why I'm getting in. I ran for U.S. Congress in the western suburbs of the Twin Cities last time. A lot of my supporters wanted me to stick around, and because my message that the promise of America is alive and well, it works for everyone, regardless of race and regardless of social standing. My life story is a testament to that story.
And go ahead into that a little bit. I've seen an interview with you, and your life story is fascinating. Tell us why you want to do what you're doing, where you came from, sir.
Yeah, you know what? I started my life as a kid in the public housing project of Harlem. My mom divorced when I was young, and that first part of my childhood, the first five years of my life, was in Harlem projects, and later in a trailer park in Oklahoma. My dad came and got me and my younger brother to live with him. I tell people that, look, I've been called ghetto kid, trailer trash, and a lot worse. But here's what I've learned. With a solid education, where you start in life is not where you have to stay in life in this country. And the promise of it is for everyone. And I like to tell people I'm exceptional, but I'm not. We live in an exceptional country. I serve an exceptional God. And I want everyone to have the same type of experience that I have, or even better, in their own lives. And you don't need to be dependent on government to do it.
There you go. Well, I love that last part of that whole thing right there, Kendall. Thank you for that part. We don't need to be dependent on government. We should get government out of our lives. Kendall Qualls, exactly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. Coming up, more on winning back America with those boys from the Beltway, Rick Gates, Mark Halpern, on The Balance after this. With the 2022 midterm campaigns just around the corner, lawmakers on Capitol Hill are already seeing the writing on the wall. 26 Democrats announced they will not be seeking re-election this year. Compare that to only 14 Republicans, 3 of whom voted to impeach Trump, including Representative John Katko, who announced earlier today he will not seek re-election. Joining us now to talk about the possible red wave going forward, Washington political analyst Mark Halperin and Rick Gates. Thanks, guys, for joining. You know, Katko announced today he's not running. He obviously is one of the people who voted to impeach Trump. I guess he said he wanted to spend more time, quality time with his family, but that's political speak for I'm going to lose this race, so I'm going to get out before I lose it. Is it not, Mark Halperin?
Well, he also voted for the infrastructure bill, which President Trump singled him out for that as well. His district, you know, was subject to the redistricting in New York, controlled largely by the Democrats. And so I'm not sure he would have won re-election or not, but he certainly chose, as many of the retirees in both parties are doing, what we like to call the path of least resistance.
Out the door. So, Rick, Mark brought up a good point. I hope we don't get too wonky here for the audience here, but redistricting is a big deal. So if you have a state, if you control the state house in a state, you can kind of change things and make your districts look good for your side. Tell us very quickly. I saw @Redistrict is a Twitter handle that talks all about it. I think there's an equal, like right down the middle. It's Republicans and Democrats about the same for redistricting benefits going in 22. What are you hearing? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, it's a big issue because we're redrawing the boundary lines almost of every state, and that's playing a big role. It's playing a big role in Georgia as we watch a lot of the races down there unfold, and it's turning a lot of Democratic districts back to red. And so I think as we see this, you look at the population, the census, it also gave kind of Texas and Florida some additional seats, took away some from California and New York. So the redistricting is playing a significant role in the development of how these elections turn out. I think it's ultimately going to benefit Republicans slightly more than Democrats, though.
So redistricting looks like it's almost a Washington, Rick, maybe a little bit leaning a little bit red, but the vast majority of people believe that there'll be a red wave, at least in the House side. But let's talk about a couple of the big races. I think Georgia is a big circle on everyone's map right now. You're looking at the governor's mansion. You're looking at a couple major Senate races. Herschel Walker in the governor's race. You look at Perdue going up against Kemp. Kemp has obviously got the dislike or the ire of President Trump. Mark, what do you think, Georgia? How does Georgia play out? Stacey Abrams is in the mix. How does it go down?
Look, it's obviously moved from a red state to a purple state, and you've got now things hanging in the balance in 2022. 2022 could be an extraordinarily good year for Republicans again in Georgia. They could move it back to being in red category. You've got those competitive Republican primaries. Herschel Walker right now looks pretty much close to a lock for the Senate race. But in the governor's race, you've got a very competitive primary there. I think you'll see the question will come out, will the party be united in November? Regardless of who wins that primary, will they be united as a Republican center-right party to beat Stacey Abrams or not? She could win, even in a red year, if the party's badly divided.
Okay, I'll let you take that one, Rick, because my jaw just kind of dropped. The Mark said Stacey Abrams could actually win in the gubernatorial race in Georgia. What do you say, Rick?
Yeah, this is rare, Eric. I might actually agree with Mark, but I am worried about the primary and the amount of resources and the ugly, bitter fight that's going to unfold between a pro-Trump candidate and an anti-Trump candidate. And my hope is that the party coalesces behind the winner and that people like Herschel Walker can bring those people out. The coattails can have that effect. Because, look, Stacey Abrams has built a pretty strong empire down there. She's got a lot of the get out the vote efforts on the Democratic side that she set up with a lot of groups. So I am concerned about her ability to kind of waltz through the primary while the Republicans duke it out.
You know, you make a very good point. The amount of resources that Republicans, the pro-Trump Republicans, Trump-endorsed Republicans versus the anti-Trumpers, are going to spend a lot of money primarying each other. Mark, talk to us a little bit about in Arizona. That's exactly what's happening in the governor's mansion in Arizona as well, with the Kerry Lake pro-Trump candidate going up against Ducey and maybe others. What are your thoughts on those?
Arizona, another state that used to be red, it's now purple. You've got an incumbent Democratic Senator, Mark Kelly, who's up. You've got the open governor's race and 2 crowded Republican primaries. Same thing. In a red year, in a year where Republicans should do well, if the party can come out of the nomination fights with united party, quality candidates, the Trump wing and anti-Trump wings, however large they are in any given state, united, Republicans should win a lot of these races. But again, someone like Mark Kelly, someone like Stacey Abrams, they're strong candidates. They're not people who you would say would win in a totally clean battle. But if they have no primaries and they're going up against contested primaries, it's a challenge for the party.
Very quickly, guys, Rick, final thought here. What are your thoughts on Dr. Oz winning a Senate race in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, look, I've watched him. I love him as a candidate. The one thing that you're concerned about when somebody that's from the outside doesn't have a lot of political experience is how they're going to do in the moment, in the situation. It's just watching Dr. Oz being interviewed by you. Fantastic speaker, hits the points. He's got a good future ahead of him. I think he's going to do very well in Pennsylvania.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Rick Gates, Mark Halpin. We're going to be talking to you guys a lot as we go forward. We even had a snappy new graphic for you guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Eric. Good to talk to you.
All right, joining us now to fill us in on what to expect from former President Donald Trump's big rally tomorrow night. Please welcome our very own good friend of mine, Heather Childers. Heather, tell us, you're going to be covering this thing. What are you expecting?
Yeah, how you doing, Eric? It's great to see you.
Good to see you, too.
It's going to be a big night. We've covered all of these rallies. This is the first time that President Trump has held a rally, the former president, in 3 months. So obviously this will be a big one. We'll have a lot to talk about. We'll have John Bachman there on the scene, along with our Sarah Williamson, who'll be talking to everybody in the crowd. Rob Finnerty will be here in New York City with me. And we're going to have a whole host of guests that we're going to be talking to, along with an exclusive interview with President Trump himself. Of course.
Oh, wow. There's some breaking news, folks, right there. You got the man himself who's going to spend some time with you. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So talk to us about all the, we were just talking to Gates and Halpern about this, about the anti-Trump Republicans duking it out with pro-Trump Republicans, spending a lot of resources on that side of it before they even come up against a liberal challenger.
Yeah, I was just listening to your conversation. You were specifically talking about the state of Georgia when it comes to redistricting and some issues there. And I find it interesting that one of the guests that's going to be there in Arizona is Dr. Alveda King, of course, the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King. So it'll be interesting to see what she has to say with what just transpired this past week when President Biden, of course, and the VP went to Georgia and they were talking about voting rights. And there was a lot of pushback. Stacey Abrams, who you were just talking about, was not even present there, and folks saying that President Biden went too far in what he said there in the state of Georgia this past week. So Dr. Alveda King, I'll be interested to see what she has to say about it.
Okay, quick thought, Heather, we've got to go, but tell us what can watch, what time, and tell us the lineup.
Well, one other person I wanted to tell you that we have Ted Nugent and Carrie Lake. So we got a big, long list of guests that we'll be talking to. You can join me alongside Rob Finnerty, John Bachman, the Save America Rally pre-show. It starts tomorrow night, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. This, of course, as we said, the former president's first rally in 3 months. In addition to President Trump, you'll hear from a lot of other great people. I didn't mention Pam Bondi, Rick Grinnell, Ted Nugent, just to reiterate that, and baseball legend Curt Schilling, along with a whole lot of others. And for more information, you can text REMIND to 39-747. That's tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's when all the fun begins, right here only on Newsmax, Eric.
It's where all the cool kids will be. Heather, I'll be watching you tomorrow night. Thanks for joining us.
It was great to see you.
You too. You too. All right, you can watch Heather every day at 2 p.m. on American Agenda. Coming up, I ask for your questions about COVID, and you never let me down. Dr. J answers them next on The Balance. Thanks to the Supreme Court, Joe Biden's vaccine mandate has been deemed unconstitutional, obviously. Large businesses won't be mandated to require their workers to be vaccinated. That's great. Can't say I'm surprised, though. In what world can someone look at a law that forces you to stick a needle into your body and think it's okay? Unfortunately, though the Supreme Court only got half right, they still think it's okay to mandate healthcare workers to get the shot. So now we have to wonder what's going to happen to our hospitals. The fact of the matter is millions of people in the U.S. have decided that they don't want to get vaccinated. That means a significant percentage of all healthcare workers in America are unvaccinated also. And that means, logically, our hospitals will fill up quickly. Patients aren't going to get help. And in some communities in America, people will die or will be in need of medical help and won't be able to get it. Could even end up without a place to go if you get sick or worse. And we can see how staffing shortages are already impacting our medical centers. Over 1,200 hospitals across the country are reporting critical staffing shortages. On top of that, many of them are being forced to keep hospital beds empty, including beds in intensive care units, thanks again to the shortages of staff. But you want to know how some of these hospitals are trying to fix their problem? by letting COVID-infected staff members to stay on the job. How insane are these liberal policies going to get? Instead of letting unvaccinated but healthy doctors and nurses treat patients, officials are allowing contagious people to go to work just because they're vaccinated. It's not about a control. I don't know what it is. We know vaccinations don't stop the spread of COVID. We know that Omicron strain isn't even as deadly as the flu, but for some reason, Democrats in power won't get out from under their rock to see how their policies are ruining America. Remember when Joe Biden told us that taking the vaccine was our choice?
And again, to folks who are not vaccinated, you might think you're putting only yourself at risk, but it's your choice.
Yeah, this is why you can never trust a politician when his mouth moving. It means he's lying. Honesty crosses both party lines. We can respect a president who tells the truth, but Joe Biden doesn't. He told us taking the vaccine was going to be our choice, and he lied. And now hospitals across the country are in danger of shutting down. These staffing shortages aren't going away anytime soon. So what's going to happen when these hospitals realize they need more people? They're going to bring back all their unvaccinated staffers? I don't know, but I'll tell you what will happen. Their hands will be tied thanks to Joe Biden. They'll either have to shut down, forcing thousands of people to lose out on medical care, or they'll start hiring folks who have no idea what they're doing and hope they don't make things worse. Looking forward to that. Let's bring in a good friend of ours, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He's a professor of medicine at Stanford. So, Doctor, I wanted to just take a minute and talk to you a little bit this story regarding Joe Rogan and his podcast. We saw that 270 science and health professionals have reached out to Spotify, where Joe publishes his podcast, urging the platform to take down the podcast, or at least take action with him, claiming they're broadcasting misinformation. What are your thoughts on these 270 doctors? What are your thoughts on the Rogan podcast?
Well, first of all, I think Joe Rogan has served a very constructive role during this whole pandemic. He has brought people that agree with him and disagree with him, and has had intelligent conversations with all of them, and has informed the public very well about what the thinking is in the medical community around lockdowns, around vaccines, around a whole bunch of issues that otherwise are taboo elsewhere. He's played an enormously constructive role. The doctors themselves that signed it, the medical community, many of whom have been foursquare against the foursquare in favor of the lockdowns, the most prominent people like Dr. Fauci, are themselves put out misinformation by promising that the lockdowns would stop COVID, or that the vaccines would stop transmission. They themselves have engaged in misinformation, even though the sort of the center won't call it that. So I think it's kind of a funny moment. We live in a country that has at its central document a commitment to free speech, a free discussion. We have an ethos of free discussion that I thought characterized America, made it different from many, many other places. To have this kind of movement against someone like Joe Rogan, I think, is an enormous mistake.
Yeah, and Doctor, so these social media companies, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, are pulling people down with what they call misinformation, when the reality is sometimes we don't even know what's information and what's not, because it seems to be a moving target. As you point out, or I'll point it out, at one point Fauci said wear a mask, then he said you don't need a mask, then you need 2 masks. It's a moving target. Can you clear something up? Rachel Walensky, the CDC director, the other day made a comment about people dying from COVID with comorbidities. Now, I understand she was talking about some people who are unvaccinated, but do we know the actual number of people who are dying from COVID in America, and how many are dying with COVID?
I mean, that's something that we need to have a very careful audit of, which we haven't. There have been a couple of counties, like Alameda County and Santa Clara County, where I live, have done some death certificate audits where they've gone back and looked and found that about at least a quarter of people that were found to be dead from COVID, or died from COVID, actually died from unrelated sources, unrelated things with a COVID diagnosis. One in 4. Those are small samples of. I would love to see a much more comprehensive analysis. In fact, when she was asked, Rochelle Walensky was asked, the CDC director was asked in Congress the other day whether the CDC itself had a number. She said it doesn't. That is a huge I mean, I just don't understand how at this point in the epidemic, we don't have that number. It's a critically important number to understand sort of who actually is at risk from COVID, who's actually not. This kind of risk profiling is really, from a medical point of view, an important thing. And I don't understand how the CDC has not made it a priority to distinguish it.
I don't either. I mean, I know why people would say it's a death from COVID when it may be something else, because there's a lot of money associated with deaths from COVID. Doctor, we always ask of you a question, at least one, sometimes more. Tora Guardian asks, why/how does ivermectin work against COVID? And or is there anything else that would work as well as ivermectin? Your thoughts?
So I'll tell you, with ivermectin, I haven't decided.